So I'm back with Tony Kim, who was one of 5 counsel at the IRS who supported the IRS's Global High Wealth Program. As we learned last time, the IRS's Global High Wealth Program focuses on complex audits of individuals with total positive income in excess of $10 million in a year. So Tony, how does a Global High Wealth individual prepare for an IRS Global High Wealth audit?
Hey, Nick, I think the answer is that a global high wealth individual, unlike a normal taxpayer, would basically supercharge their preparation to adequately get their ducks in a row. So what do I mean by that? Global high wealth audits, by the nature of why the program was established, was the recognition that there is an incredible amount of complexity and entities involved in global high wealth taxpayers, that population. That means that unlike a normal taxpayer, the global high wealth taxpayer has to go through all of this, the complex transactions and entities, get the documents in place, put them aside, get them ready, because the longer you wait, the harder it is to get the individuals and the documents ready to produce when the IRS asks. So get all those issues, get all those documents, get all those statements, get tax opinions, get them all housed and completed early before memories fade, before people move their jobs and move away. Get them all ready, because unlike a normal taxpayer where they may have to get 1 or 2 issues ready with documents and a list of potential witnesses, for a global high wealth taxpayer, they may have 15 or 20. So they need to do a lot more background work and preparation than a normal taxpayer. So the answer is supercharge the preparation.
So Tony, you're talking about getting your ducks in a row. So maybe 2 parts to that. When does that start? I think in the first place, when do you start getting those ducks in a row? And is there maybe more concern there because this population is at greater risk of audit?
Yeah, there is. If you look at the numbers, the IRS publishes a stat book on audits. The higher the income, the higher the rate or the likelihood of an audit. So you look at the numbers and they tell you directly, higher income results in higher audit probability. That said, if you are a global high wealth taxpayer with the higher likelihood of audit, what you should do is, if you have a large transaction, the preparation really begins before you even enter the transaction. So in the planning stages, you should employ or engage a tax specialist, a tax counsel. Ask that person, well, what's my risk? What do I need to do? What actions do I need to take to make sure that I minimize my tax liability? And then follow those steps. So some of the things that I know that can happen is, one way of minimizing your liability if you're a taxpayer and you have a large transaction is to request a private letter ruling. That's one element, and that is nearly a certainty. If you get a positive private letter ruling, then you can rely on that. Now, if a taxpayer wants more certainty, they can go out in the private sector and secure tax insurance. As long as the taxpayer has a more likely than not tax opinion. Some professional has said, I've looked at your proposed transaction, and I believe that there's a greater than 50% chance that if audited, that transaction will be sustained. That is no change by the IRS. Well, the taxpayer can supplement that tax opinion by then engaging and getting tax insurance, which covers the other aspect. So getting a private letter ruling, getting a favorable tax opinion, and supplementing that with tax insurance really closes the risk for a global high wealth for transactions. And so the risk and the monetary risk for each transaction will hopefully guide a taxpayer in the global high wealth population to determine whether they need one or more of these tools to mitigate risk.
So I was recently reading a Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration report where they were talking about the amount that the IRS recovers per hour spent on global high wealth audits. That's in the last calendar year or the last fiscal year, that was upwards of $11,000 to $12,000 per hour spent on these audits, which is far, far more than the IRS recovers on any other type of audit. So certainly the Inspector General is pushing the IRS to do more and more of these audits, especially considering the pressures that the IRS is under to generate more funds to justify the increased funding that it's received. So the IRS is supposed to receive over $60 billion of funding in the coming years. How do you think that increased funding is going to affect the IRS Global High Wealth Program?
Yeah, anecdotally, when I was with the service, I did hear that the additional funding would result in quite a substantial uptick in personnel devoted or assigned to global high wealth. But I, having just left the service just 9 months ago, the normal attrition rate for the IRS is something like, I think, 6 or 7%. The current staffing is about 80,000. So if you look at normal attrition, that's about 5,600 to 6,000 people leaving, like me, leaving the employment of the IRS chief counsel. So if you think about 6,000 people leaving a year, and they were talking about perhaps 8,000 new people coming in, you've got a net increase of maybe a couple of thousand employees a year, possibly, and only a little subset of that is going to go into the agent ranks. So yes, they talked about increasing the staffing of global high wealth, whether the amount of money, and I heard also that in the news that Congress had cut the original budgeting. So I don't think
that's why I said 60 billion. It was originally supposed to be 80 billion. I think we're at 60 billion now based on these cuts.
So now the IRS has to determine, well, are we going to put that towards infrastructure, IT systems, or are we still able to put that towards personnel? And by the way, even if the staffing is increased in global high wealth, it is a very, very difficult road to get a global high wealth agent up to speed to conduct these audits, because a normal agent, they'll get training assignments handling small audits. That the amount of time to get a new agent up to speed on small audits is, in my view, not that long. But to get an agent up to speed to handle a global high wealth audit, which requires so many different personnel and coordination, understanding how the government functions, understanding how to get information from abroad, dealing with all the different specialists and coordination, it is a serious devotion of manpower to try to staff, get the personnel in place, but also get them with the knowledge base to be able to effectively work to develop these cases. It is a difficult task. So I think first, getting the personnel on board is difficult, even with the additional funding. But even if you do, getting them where they're actually productive in this very complex environment, global high wealth audits, that's going to take years, and it is not going to be a quick increase in revenue.
That's great information. Thanks, Tom.
You bet. Thanks, Nick.